Welcome to Bending the Curve, where we highlight environmental successes, achievements, and results. Here are 5 stories that we're tracking this week. Our first story this week comes from Canary Media, which is an environmental news site. The headline reads, "Solar to overtake coal on the Texas electrical grid for the first time ever this year." Now, this really caught my eye because Texas is thought of as a red state, a very conservative state whose economy is built on fossil fuels, oil and natural gas mostly. And here it is, solar becoming a more important component of its electrical generation. And it turns out this is because Texas has a unique position in the electrical grid nationwide. It's basically cut off from the entire grid and is independent in terms of electricity generation and distribution. And this has led to an interesting situation where the free market is now kind of deciding how electricity is generated in Texas. The story notes that last year, 2025, solar output beat coal on a monthly basis from March through August. And this year, 2026, it's expected to do the same thing from March through December. That's almost an entire year. And this is according to the Federal Department of Energy. And this flies in the face of what the current administration in Washington wants, which is moving more backwards towards coal, oil, and gas. Well, Texas, a red state, is going in the correct direction towards renewables, solar and wind power. And there's a lesson here for other states in that if they perhaps look at their business regulations, their building codes, even some of their environmental regulations that encourage utilities to move more towards solar, wind, and other renewables, that will move even more quickly toward getting rid of fossil fuels for electricity generation. The next story we have comes from Grist, an environmental news site that also is covering clean energy. And it's reporting now on something called portable plug-in solar. Now, you might have heard of this from another term called balcony solar. And as the name suggests, you can buy systems now that essentially hang on your balcony rail and generate electricity with solar cells, and that you can plug those solar cells directly into your residential plug-in and power maybe a refrigerator or an air conditioner or something else that's not on the local electrical grid. Well, there was a state legislator in Utah that visited Germany and learned about the exploding popularity of these balcony solar systems, and thought that this was right for his state. So he and other legislators sponsored a bill called HB 340, which allows residences to take these portable plug-in solar systems and generate electricity for their homes. Homeowners can save a little bit of money, and they can feel a little bit more independent, which is an important value in a state like Utah. 30 other states are now looking at portable plug-in solar as an option for residences. Now, there's a little bit of a downside in that there are currently no nationwide or industry-wide safety standards for these plug-in solar systems, at least in the U.S. There are efforts to develop those standards. Underwriters Laboratories is taking a look at these under the Utah law. But it's just a technical issue. I mean, these standards will be developed. The manufacturers, if they want to stay in business, will start adhering to these standards. And we could see plug-in solar becoming an important part of the electrical grid as we move away from oil, natural gas, and other fossil fuels for electricity generation. The next story we have is from the Guardian newspaper. It's based in the UK, but they cover a lot of issues in the US. This story's headline reads, "This LA neighborhood is choked by smog. The solution, a network of sensors on offices, homes, and bags." And the last bit actually caught my eye the most, and I'll explain that in just a second. But there's a neighborhood north of Los Angeles called Pacoima. It's largely Hispanic, a little bit lower income, and as well as residences. It's heavily industrialized. There are landfills, there's a small airport, there are auto body shops and other kinds of industries that can generate a lot of air pollution. I guess there's several freeways that go through Pacoima. The residents there were starting to get very worried about the air quality and how that might be affecting their children in their community. But they were very unhappy, or are unhappy, with how local authorities, air quality authorities, are responding to their needs. At the same time, they realized that they needed information, and so they are working with a local community group and local academics to measure with sensors air quality throughout the city. And one of those components of that, which I found pretty interesting, was a mobile sensor array that can fit into your backpack, your purse, canvas bag when you go to the grocery store, and you become essentially a mobile air quality sensor, checking on the quality of air all around the community. And they're going to use this data to ask for more action from their air quality authorities down in the LA basin. There's a professor at California State University Northridge. Her name is Paloma Giotinini. She's an urban planning professor, and she says data in the hands of the community is really powerful. This is a case where a community can take environmental justice into their own hands, go to authorities with good evidence, and hopefully get those authorities to take action. The next story we're going to look at is focused on ocean ecology. It's reported by the New York Times. The headline reads, "New coral study identifies areas where reefs are hanging on." Now, we've all heard about the phenomenon called coral bleaching. This is when the water around coral reefs gets too warm for the corals themselves. They're small animals, and if the water gets too hot, they die. And it gets hot because of ocean temperatures are warming due to climate change. And they leave behind, when they die, their exoskeletons, or their skeletons, which are white, thus the term coral bleaching. The study found that even in these areas where there's bleaching, there are little pockets of coral that are doing at least better, if not thriving. The currents are a little cooler there. There's reduced exposure to sunlight, and they're outside of the paths of cyclones, especially in the Western Pacific. So these little pockets of surviving and thriving reefs could become the seeds for regenerating other portions of the reefs that aren't doing so well, and also gives people more chance to earn a living. I mean, the folks are fishing off of these reefs. There's a tourism component here. And also for the wildlife, at least a quarter of the ocean's species depend on coral reefs for some portion of their life cycle. So maybe this study gives us a little bit of hope that coral reefs can do better in the future if we do a better job of protecting these areas. The last story we have comes from a site called Yale Environment 360, which covers all kinds of environmental news. The headline reads, "Long lost African bird captured in striking photos." Now, this bird is called the black lord waxbill, and it was thought extinct, or at least no one had photographed examples of this bird since 1950. 1950. That's more than 70 years ago. But a young park ranger in a national park in the Democratic Republic of the Congo came across a group of these birds and took some amazing photos, and thus proved that the birds are still existing in the Democratic Republic of the Congo, in a marshy habitat, a remote habitat, and that this is now a chance to try to protect these birds further, as well as their habitat. Now, as you might know, Democratic Republic of the Congo has a long history, unfortunately, of civil war and environmental exploitation. So we're hopeful that the discovery of these birds could spur new efforts to save their habitat. But this photograph and the efforts to save these birds could become a good sign for the future. Hey, thanks for watching Bending the Curve. We'd like to hear your comments. Tell us about a story that you think is important. In the meantime, like, subscribe, and hit the notifications bell for our next edition.